break. Jesus is alive. We believe he's alive. And oh, happy day, you washed my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. No, 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 forever I am changed. And oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious way that you have saved me. And oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious name. Whoa. And oh, happy day, you washed my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Your love has rescued me. Forever I am changed. What a glorious, glorious day. I'll never be the same.
Hey guys, welcome back to KidsQuest. I hope you guys had another really awesome week. We are starting a new unit this week about gardening. And I don't know if you guys knew this about me, but I love plants. And when I was little, I thought maybe one day I would want to be a botanist. Does anybody know what a botanist is? So a botanist is like a plant scientist. And obviously I didn't become a plant scientist, but I've learned a lot of things about plants, and I'm gonna share some of those things with you over the next few weeks. So like I said, botanists are plant scientists, and what they do is they study what helps plants to grow faster and stronger, and especially what helps them to multiply faster. See, a plant makes seeds, and then the seeds can grow more plants. And then those plants can grow more plants from their seeds. And so plants can multiply. And it kind of reminds me of Abraham. Abraham is who we're going to be talking about today. And it reminds me of Abraham because Abraham was the seed for a whole nation. God used Abraham as the beginning of a nation, and his children had children, and their children had children, and grew into a nation that God had promised Abraham. Now, when you think about Abraham, some of the situations that he gets into sound kind of crazy. And you might wonder, how did Abraham trust God in that situation when everything seemed so out of control? And so a question we're going to talk about over the next few weeks is, why can we trust God? And I want you to listen and think about that as you're listening to this story, and then I will tell you the answer when we come back.
Abram lived with his wife, Sarai. God chose Abram and told him to move to a place he had never been. God promised Abram 3 things: a large family, land for his family, and blessing.
God visited Abram in a vision and said, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward will be great." This was a good promise, but Abram was sad. He didn't have any children to inherit his blessing. "One of my slaves will be my heir," Abram said.
But God had a better plan. He took Abram outside to remind him of his promise. "Look at the sky and count the stars, if you can," God said. Abram couldn't count the stars. There were too many. "Your family will be that numerous," God promised.
Abram believed God, and God was pleased. God also promised that Abram's family would keep the land they were living in. Abram asked, "How can I be sure?" So God confirmed his covenant with Abram. God told Abram to bring 5 animals: a cow, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. Abram did as God said, and he divided the animals. Then, when the sun was setting, a deep sleep came over him. While Abram slept, God told him what would happen in the future.
He said that Abram's family would be slaves in another country for 400 years. Then God would judge the nation and bless Abram's family. Even though these things would happen, Abram would live a long, peaceful life. When it was dark, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch representing God passed between the divided animals. This showed that God would be responsible for keeping his promise.
Many years passed, and Abram still didn't have the promised son. God hadn't forgotten, though. He appeared to Abram again and reminded him, I am Almighty God. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you greatly. God was so serious about his promise that he changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of a great multitude.
God told Abraham that he would be the father of nations, even kings. I will keep my promise to you, God said, and it will last forever. I will be your God, and I will be the God of your family, of everyone who comes after you. God also promised to give Abraham and his offspring all the land of Canaan where they were living. You will own this land forever, he said.
God called Abraham to leave his country and family to go to another land. God promised to bless all the world through Abraham. God sent Jesus from his home in heaven to be born on earth into Abraham's family. Through Jesus, all the nations of the earth are blessed.
So you see, God promised Abraham that he would have lots of family, that he would have children, and their children would have children, and their children would have children. And this was a really big deal. It's kind of like what we talked about, how plants make seeds, and those seeds make plants. And those seeds can make more plants, right? It's kind of similar to that. And the crazy thing was that Abraham and his wife were really old. You don't see a lot of people at their age having babies. It's just hard for them to do. And so it was hard for Abraham to trust God and to believe that he was really going to have this big family when he was already so old. And so that brings us to our question that we're going to talk about for the next few weeks, which is, why can we trust God? And this is the answer I want you to remember. We can trust God because he's always faithful, and he does everything for his glory and for our good. It's kind of long, so let's go over it again. We can trust God because he's faithful. Pause. What does faithful mean? It means that he keeps his promises. Okay? So we can trust God because he's always faithful, and he does everything for his glory and our good. All right, one more time. Ready? Why can we trust God? We can trust God because he's always faithful, and he does everything for his glory and our good. Way to go. Y'all practice that this week, okay? Now before we go, we've got a new memory verse to learn this week, and we'll talk about what it means as we go along, okay? So it starts, if you belong to Christ, say that. If you belong to Christ, then it says, then you are Abraham's seed. So let's do this. If you belong to Christ, whoop, my hat, point up to the sky. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. So you can do your fingers like this, like you're spreading seeds in the soil. Okay? If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. Then it says, and heirs. Okay, so we're going to do like this, like we're putting a crown on, because an heir means that you are inheriting something. So an heir to a throne would be like the son of a king. And when the king passes away, then the son becomes the king and he puts on the crown. Okay, so we're going to do an heirs according to the promise. You can give a thumbs up. Now, what does it mean to be a seed of Abraham? It says we're Abraham's seed. What that means is that Abraham started something huge. He was the very beginning of God's big family. So he was like the first seed that planted more plants that made more seeds, and planted more plants that made more seeds. So Abraham had children who had children who had children, and we all get to be a part of God's big family because of Abraham, and then because of what Jesus did later to invite us to be part of that family. Okay? So, here we go again. If you belong to Christ, you are Abraham's seed. Do that one more time. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. Here we go again. And heirs according to the promise. One more time from the beginning. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Now this is in Galatians 3 verse 29. Galatians 3:29. So I want you guys to practice that one. I know it's a little bit longer than ones we've done in the past, but we will go over it again next week, and we're going to learn even more about gardening. Y'all have a good week.